Most people think Miyamoto Musashi won because he was the greatest swordsman who ever lived. That's the safe version of the story. The real one is far more disturbing. In an age where a single mistake meant death, Musashi kept walking into battles he statistically should not have survived. Walking out alive, not because his strikes were faster or his body stronger, but because his opponents were already defeated long before their swords were drawn, while they were following tradition, routine, and honor. Musashi was practicing a discipline so uncomfortable and mentally violent that most warriors refused to acknowledge it as discipline at all. He understood something timeless. Humans break psychologically before they break physically, and Musashi built his entire life around exploiting that weakness. This wasn't luck. It wasn't arrogance. It was a calculated method designed to control fear, timing, and expectation, turning confident warriors into impatient men who made fatal mistakes. Once you see this method clearly, Musashi's victories stop looking heroic and start looking inevitable. Musashi lived during Japan's Sengoku period, a world defined by chaos, betrayal, and constant war. Samurai were trained from childhood to believe discipline meant strict routines, flawless technique, and absolute obedience to tradition. Identity came from schools, uniforms, reputations, and predictability. Musashi rejected all of it. He wandered without a master, slept in discomfort, ignored appearances, and deliberately removed anything that made life feel stable. To other warriors, he looked undisciplined, even disrespectful, but that misunderstanding was the point. Musashi was disciplining his mind to remain calm when structure disappeared, to function when timing was disrupted, and to stay emotionally neutral while others reacted with anger or fear. He trained himself to be comfortable in uncertainty, while his opponents depended on control. This single mental discipline allowed him to dominate more than 60 life-or-death encounters, without relying on brute strength or flawless technique. By the end of this video, you well understand why history remembers Musashi as a master swordsman but quietly forgets the discipline method that actually made him unbeatable. Part 1. The illusion of skill and strength. Most people are taught to believe that battles are won by superior skill, sharper technique, or overwhelming strength. In Musashi's time, this belief was everywhere. Samurai schools promised victory through perfect form, endless repetition, and rigid discipline. Warriors spent years polishing movements, memorizing patterns, and building reputations around how flawless they looked. But this system created a dangerous illusion. It trained men to depend on conditions being right. They needed the duel to start on time, the environment to feel familiar, and their opponent to behave predictably. Musashi saw the weakness in this long before others did. He understood that no matter how skilled a man was, the moment his expectations were disrupted, his skill collapsed. Fear crept in, anger followed. Timing broke. Musashi didn't try to become the most technically perfect swordsman in Japan. Instead, he focused on something far more ruthless, removing his own dependence on comfort and certainty. He trained himself to fight when tired, hungry, irritated, and misunderstood. Where others sharpened technique, Musashi sharpened tolerance for psychological pressure. This is why so many skilled warriors fell to him. They entered battles confident in their preparation, only to realize too late that preparation without adaptability is fragile. Musashi didn't aim to overpower opponents physically. He aimed to expose the moment their mind betrayed them. Once that happened, the fight was already over. Part 2. The discipline of discomfort. Musashi's forgotten discipline began with intentional discomfort. Unlike other samurai who sought stability, Musashi removed it from his life completely. He wandered constantly, owned almost nothing, and avoided permanent shelter or routine. This wasn't poverty or recklessness. It was training. By living without comfort, Musashi made discomfort normal. Hunger, fatigue, uncertainty, and social judgments stopped being threats. They became background noise. This mattered because most warriors only experienced discomfort during battle. When pressure arrived, it shocked their system. Musashi, on the other hand, arrived already acclimated. His nervous system didn't panic because it recognized the environment. This discipline extended beyond physical hardship. Musashi also abandoned emotional comfort. He didn't rely on praise, rank, or approval. Insults didn't provoke him. Reputation didn't stabilize him. This emotional detachment made him extremely difficult to manipulate. Opponents couldn't bait him into anger or rush him with intimidation. While others needed reassurance to feel confident, Musashi functioned without it. Over time, this discipline created a terrifying advantage. He could think clearly while others reacted emotionally. He could wait while others rushed. In a duel, this gap was lethal. Musashi wasn't just strong under pressure. Pressure was where he felt most at home. Part 3. Psychological disruption as a weapon. One of Musashi's most misunderstood habits was his unpredictability. He arrived late to duels. He appeared unkempt. He ignored formal etiquette. To traditional samurai, this looked disrespectful or careless. In reality, it was psychological warfare. Musashi understood that the mind seeks rhythm and certainty. When that rhythm breaks, focus shatters. By disrupting expectations before a duel even began, Musashi forced opponents into emotional reactions. They became irritated, impatient, or offended. Their thoughts shifted away from strategy and into ego. Musashi stayed silent and observant, allowing their emotions to rise unchecked. This wasn't accidental. It was disciplined restraint. He didn't rush to assert dominance. He let his opponent do it for him and pay the price. By the time swords were drawn, Musashi already knew how his opponent would react under stress. He had watched their impatience, their anger, their inability to stay neutral. In combat, that information was priceless. Musashi's discipline wasn't about chaos for its own sake. It was controlled disruption. He created disorder externally while maintaining absolute internal order. That contrast broke opponents mentally before physical contact ever happened. Most warriors never realized they were being manipulated. They believed they were fighting Musashi's body, when in reality, they were fighting their own uncontrolled mind. Part 4. Control of timing and silence. Musashi believed timing was more important than speed. Speed could be matched. Timing couldn't. His discipline trained him to wait without tension, to move only when advantage was guaranteed. Silence played a critical role here. Musashi didn't waste words. He didn't announce intentions or explain himself. Silence unsettled people. It forced them to fill the gap with assumptions. Opponents projected confidence, fear, or arrogance onto Musashi, none of which he confirmed or denied. This gave him control over the emotional tempo of the encounter. While others grew restless, Musashi remained still. Stillness created pressure. Pressure created mistakes. This discipline required immense self-control. Waiting feels passive, but it's not. It demands emotional regulation and trust in one's judgment. Many warriors struck too early because they couldn't tolerate uncertainty. Musashi trained himself to endure it. When he finally moved, it wasn't reactive, it was decisive. His strikes weren't flashy. They were final. This mastery of timing made his victories appear effortless. In truth, they were the result of long-term discipline practiced far away from the battlefield. In moments where Musashi chose patience over comfort and silence over ego. Part 5. Detachment from identity and ego. Another pillar of Musashi's discipline was detachment from identity. Most warriors define themselves by their school, rank, or reputation. Musashi refused all of it. He didn't belong to a school, and he didn't protect an image. This made him psychologically free. Losing reputation didn't scare him because he didn't rely on it. Being mocked didn't weaken him because his confidence wasn't external. This detachment allowed Musashi to adapt freely. He could change tactics, environments, or methods without feeling like he was betraying who he was. Ego locks people into predictable behavior. Musashi avoided that trap entirely. He wrote later that one must not become attached to any single way of doing things. This wasn't philosophical poetry, it was battlefield survival. By refusing identity-based discipline, Musashi kept his mind fluid. Opponents couldn't anticipate him because he wasn't trying to be consistent. He was trying to be effective. This discipline is deeply uncomfortable because it removes validation. There is no applause for it, no clear milestones, but it creates resilience that no technique can replace. Musashi didn't need to prove he was great. He only needed to survive and win. Part 6. Why this discipline still works. Today, Musashi's forgotten discipline hasn't disappeared because it stopped working. It disappeared because it's too demanding. Modern discipline focuses on routines, productivity systems, and visible progress. Musashi's discipline focuses on internal stability under uncertainty. It asks you to function without praise, comfort, or predictability. That's why it feels unbearable to most people. Yet the environments we face today, competitive careers, social pressure, constant change, are closer to Musashi's world than we like to admit. Those who panic under uncertainty still lose. Those who need control still break when plans collapse. Musashi's method teaches something timeless. Control yourself, and chaos becomes an advantage. This discipline isn't about fighting others. It's about training your mind to stay calm when things go wrong, to wait when others rush, and to act without emotional interference. Musashi won battles because he mastered this long before the duel began, and that's why his victories weren't accidents. They were outcomes of a discipline most people noticed too late or never at all. Miyamoto Musashi is remembered as a master of the sword, but that memory misses the most important truth. The blade was never the source of his power. His real advantage was the discipline to remain calm when others collapsed under pressure, to stay patient when emotions demanded action, and to move only when the moment was undeniably his. He didn't chase comfort, validation, or certainty. He trained himself to function without them. That is why his opponents, no matter how skilled, eventually betrayed themselves through impatience, anger, or fear. Musashi simply waited for that moment and ended the fight. The uncomfortable reality is that this discipline still decides victories today, even though the battles look different. Careers, relationships, and personal struggles are lost the same way duels were lost centuries ago, when the mind reacts instead of controls. Musashi's method asks a difficult question. Can you remain stable when things don't go your way, when timing is wrong, when recognition never comes? Most people can't, and that's why this discipline remains forgotten. Not because it failed, but because it demands too much. If there's one lesson Musashi leaves behind, it is this. The person who controls themselves in chaos doesn't need to dominate others. They simply outlast them.